Hello, Diane.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere. Been going about, I don't know, about 2 months now or 3 months now since I came over from Beacon of Light Radio. Find it very interesting. Still having some great guests on my show. And today I've got one of a really good friend of mine. He's a terrific guy. His name is Philip Kingstella. Philip is widely acclaimed clairvoyant medium. He won the British Mediumship Award in Portsmouth in 2008. Apart from taking to the platform work, he's also appeared on stage and is very much in demand for his soul survival and evidence. He's also an author of numerous books, some of which has been co-authored with his identical twin and brother, Ronald, who is also an author and illustrator from dozens of published articles on the paranormal. Philip has also appeared on Channel 4, Central TV, Digital, Angler News, along with radio interviews and also books he's published on the UFO phenomena and also the research and Rendlesham Forest incident, which occurred in Suffolk, England in 1980. Can we please welcome Philip to the show? Hello there.
Hello, Bob, and thank you for having me on your show. I have come out from nowhere. What is this? And I'm so pleased to be on your show. And as I said to you,
I
it's
like
good to.
that.
I said to you, it's good to be among family. You and Paul Sinclair, Merrill, all of you, the gang. It's wonderful. So thank you for having me on board. It's lovely, Bob. Really.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's true, isn't it? I mean, when
Um,
we're
yeah,
connecting with this type of phenomena or these, research material or looking into the paranormal, UFOs, whatever it may be, we're all after that one element, aren't we? The truth, the actual truth of it all. And that truth continually
yeah,
eludes us, I think, doesn't it?
it does. How did it all start for you then?
Well, that is a very good question and one I can answer. I think, looking back, the main area that really did it for me and my twin brother was when we had been young. And I believe it was in 1982, we were age 13. We were staying with our maternal grandparents in Felton, Middlesex. They had a big house there. It was a three-story, huge house. And we'd spend all of our holiday periods with them. And of course, they were like second parents to me and my twin brother. And on one summer's, I think it was late evening or afternoon, we debated this because, as a child, as a kid, then you don't get a diary and date it all. I had no real need to. But it was a clear sky,
No.
and we had been met by a sphere. Me, my brother, and our grandmother in the back garden. It was like the size of a football. It was silver, and it was in the sky, and then came over very quickly, and it positioned itself above our grandmother's head, and roughly in relation to where the second floor windows were, because there was a third floor as well too, and it just hovered there. And looking at it, of course, we're kids, and it looked like something from Doctor Who. We had no idea what it was, and if anyone had said to me back then, "Oh, it's a UFO," I would disagree with them because people normally imagine that UFOs are about the size of houses, but this was very small, about the size of a football. And as it hung there, we said to our grandmother, what is this? And she jokingly said, and I remembered, she said, "Oh, look, the fairies have come to take a close look at us." So, of course, we realized there were no such things as fairies. But then it went to to look through the window to the second floor. It was, well, look through, it seemed to be hovering. There was no camera. It was completely reflective in
Yeah.
nature. And then it went to the third floor window. It seemed to be hovering there, maybe looking through, I don't know, and then went over the house and then shot. And of course, at that point, I remember that night, my brother and I shared the attic room, and they had a big winding staircase. And at the bottom of the landing was my grandmother's telephone booth, her telephone booth. And I remembered listening, and she was talking. I believe it was her oldest daughter, Auntie Betty, who's no longer here, and neither is my grandmother, about this event. But then, of course, it all went quiet. No one really spoke about it anymore. It seemed to go into the ether. So that was the one major area of high strangeness. And then going forward, and I'm not going to go into the abduction phenomena because it's too long-winded,
No.
but when we moved, because we had ourselves been living in Luton there in a Victorian house, when we moved from there to a village in Marston Mortain in the winter of 1989, I had what they call an alien abduction. At that point, I was seriously into trying to find out what this was, where it was coming from, and also considering certain other aspects that within the UFO Department of Study are telling you it's one way. But for me, most of this operated on a completely different way altogether of that interaction between so-called aliens and us. There was a physical part and a non-physical part that still seemed to connect on a physical level, if that makes any sense. So that was what started the ball rolling, Bob.
Absolutely marvelous. It always fascinates me when you and Ron talk about it, and really what happened to you. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners about your new book, Terrestrial Trespassers.
Oh yes,
And
that's.
the research, what's going into it.
Yes, well, I mean, with Paul Sinclair, he's a renowned author, investigator, very well respected. I've got most of his work in there because when we connected with Paul, I believe it was his first book, I reached out to him, and then he obviously sent us a copy of his book, and that's how we connected. So the book is actually a look at these areas of high strangeness, not just about the terrestrial trespassers, which are about the greys. And that was primarily my main focus of attention with regards to these greys and what they could be, what they could represent. I'm always open to all forms of speculation. I've never said, well, this is what it is, because we don't know, Bob. But we have an arena of theories that we can kind of like work with. And that's what I do. That's what I know Paul does. That's what many other good researchers do in terms of trying to find their truth. So the book centers around what the greys could be, also the abduction phenomena, and looking at very different levels of how that is initiated, and also looking into us as the human, because I think, Bob, it's important for us to understand that although we may be chasing this phenomena that eludes us, we never seem to be able to catch up with it, and every time we seem to make some progress, it seems to move forward another step, which is making it harder for us to kind of like get any form of evidence. And I always say this, I'm not, Paul's right, the truth that leaves no proof. And that's exactly what it does. People say to me, well, where's your proof? I want proof. And I had one radio station contact me, and they had a team of skeptics there, and they said, we would like you to bring your allegations to the table, and along with proof. But my argument, I didn't go on it. But my argument was, hang on just a minute. I have no proof, only from some film footage from, was it 2000? When was that last event with the 3 UFOs? It's all been documented. Anyway, my niece took film footage, and that was analysed, and they're unknowns. But even that is not enough to convince anyone that these things have happened to you. And this is why, when they say, well, I want the proof, I want dates, I want times, or whatever you bring to the table, it will never be enough for anyone to prove that the paranormal or the UFO activity or whatever bracket you place those particular subject matters into. There's no way of ascertaining where this is coming from and where it originates from and what it's about. So my book argues about us as the human as well. It's not just about the phenomena, but also about what we represent. And interestingly, Bob, I think it's important for us to understand that the fairy tale or Sunday school version we've been given, because as a society, we have been programmed by a system for over 2,000 years that's told us, well, most of your creation mythos is linked within faith, but we don't want to really steer any more than leading you into that area. And with faith, with the system, it's easy and it's safe grounds. The scientific interpretation is very different. Theirs is very cold and clinical. To them, we just all appeared through chaos, through natural selection. And I don't believe that. But what I do believe is that there has been a secret, which has also been mentioned within terrestrial trespassers, has been hidden from the public, and it concerns not just about creation, about our emergence as the human, but also about the religious factors which have controlled and held down most of these truths. So I think going back into the past, we will find that, you know, the Sunday school version and the scientific interpretation, I think, are not quite there. But when they merge them together and bring the real story, the real codices of what happened, that will have people's jaws on the floor. But the problem is, just to finish this off, because of conscious dissidence, the public have been programmed. And therefore, if you've programmed the public from birth, it's going to be really hard for you to, you know, reprogram their normal processing of thought. And of course, that's why when anyone has an experience with the paranormal, UFOs, cryptozoology, whichever department, it takes a long time for you as the individual to go through a process of transmutation within your thoughts. And even then, you'll find that that'll take a long time. And even when you get to a point when you're accepting of that, you still go through this process of morphology. So your mind will continually move forward. It's very interesting, isn't it? So my book primarily looks into that, a little bit of on the cryptids, the werewolves, and you know, and why they and how they could possibly figure within this larger picture of what we call the paranormal. So that's what the book's about.
Steph, Philly, what do you think these silver spheres could be? Are they scout ships or something else? They seem quite common within the UFO phenomena. Many thanks,
Yeah.
Steph.
Steph, that's a very good question. And we do know that we all know, if you're an ardent ufologist, you'll know about this. But in World War II, there were reports of these spheres that were accompanying Allied aircrafts, and sometimes they would glow. That's interesting what you said there. Scout ships, absolutely. They could be the eyes, the ears and nose of these so-called extraterrestrials, or now non-human entities, as it's been labeled. It's possible that they would use some kind of reconnaissance crafts or objects to scout, because if you think about it, no one would really suspect them or see them for that reason, because they are quite small. So I agree that perhaps whatever this intelligence is, as we would use probes to go out into space, of course, we can't spend long periods within space itself, within the vacuum of space, and as well as the radiation levels and all the rest of it. But it would make sense for us that we send these probes out there to explore space, and perhaps they are doing the same. But they have been around for quite a long time, and you know, and that is very interesting as well. So, you know, it's just, you know, whether or not we can get hold of one. And I do know that there was another author. Please forgive me, I can't remember his name. I did buy his book, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't read it yet, but I'm black and white.
Yeah.
But I got this book, and it explained about these spheres that have been seen. So I did consider, when I got a little bit older, because when I got to the age of 14, 15, me and Ronnie used to take ourselves to the Bedfordshire and Luton Library every Saturday, and I did a project. Ronnie did one on robots and computers, and I was doing one on UFOs. And in the library, in the section of books there was very little in terms of the occult section, but there was a few on Loch Ness Monster and also the Roswell incident. So I was doing a project, but I did find out about these Foo Fighters, they're known as Foo Fighters, that these were reported back in World War II, but they didn't seem to help within the war. It was almost as if they were observing what was going on. And of course, both sides were wondering if the other had secret technology that they were using to spy from one country to the next, which failed to bring any evidence of that. So, but your question is absolutely sound, Steph. We still don't know, but it is quite possible that what we saw was some kind of I suppose, you know, a surveillance device. Unless, of course, the aliens were miniatures.
Before I move on to the next question, what are the Greys then? Who are the Greys?
Well, we don't know. And that is a mystery that puzzles all of us. But when I had my experience back in 1989, I said there were two components to this, because the first part happened when I was with my brother and my sister and the dog, and we saw this being coming through glass with a light. And my brother went into a trance, very strange trance, and said there's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die. Those were his exact words. And when you have something like this happen to you, you remember it for what it was, for what it is. And I can still see it like it was yesterday. The second part with the abduction was I found myself going through solid matter, or more the glass to the doors to our kitchen conservatory, and then through to wherever they took me. In 1996, a number of years after the abduction, where I had physical marks left and a possible implant in the right ear, in 1996, I had, the only way I could explain it was some kind of download. And of course, back then, if anyone had mentioned that you got a download, did you think you were potty? But I kind of understand that now. Yeah, it was almost like a mind opening, and you've got everything coming through, and it's like it's all there. So I wrote this all down, furiously typed it up as an article, and I sent it then to a magazine called Alien Encounters, which was quite common back in the day. You could get it in Smiths and that, and they published it. They called it revolutionary within its speculation, and my argument was about these grays. Well, you know, what are they? And one of the things that we have to understand with the greys is that they seem to be a blank canvas. They have no understanding of age, of taste, of smell, of love, of these attributes that make us what we are as a human species. And of course, we are a reproductive species as well. And that's another point where a lot of my work has gone down into the afterlife, into the research of the afterlife of consciousness. Take away the religious ideologies, which I do agree are important mental constructs for some people, but I believe the process is far more detailed and complex than that. So what were the greys interested in? Why did they come across as blank canvases? And why also were they interested in the process of reproduction or hybridization? Now, I didn't see any hybrids when I was on board. There was nothing of that going on. Their craft, if that's where I was, because, you know, people say, oh, you said, well, I don't know. I mean, it was a spacecraft. It appeared to me to be a spacecraft. But the question is, I spoke to Dr. David Jacobs in Phoenix, Arizona, when I went to a UFO conference. I wasn't speaking. I just went there, and I met many others. I met one of the good members there that I've been on TV with, Nick Pope, lovely man, and Dr. David Jacobs and I had a chat about the greys, and he believes they're here already and creating this program to integrate a new species within our culture. And you know, you have to give the man credit. He's probably onto something there. But my argument was, well, you know, they are like phantoms in the night. They appear out of the blue. They seem to be able to come through walls and doors, and they arrest you when they bring you into their dimension of reality. So the greys, I think, whatever they are, and we all know this to begin with, but what if we take this one step further with regards to the greys? They're obviously after something that we have that they don't. And I've argued also about the process of replication or cloning. Now, I said before earlier that we are a reproductive species. We reproduce, and therefore my understanding is that from a conscious soul level, or the spirit, comes from source and ignites into the, connection of the embryo of the child. And then, of course, develops from that moment onwards and comes through the birthing channel. Now, if we started cloning ourselves, would that be questionable in the sense that we would no longer be part of that creation process? So if the greys have replicated themselves like a photocopy machine over and over and over again, they would have lost those very essential attributes that make us what we are, that we have love, that we have smell, we have taste, and we understand we have a creative processes. We are individual. The clones are not. And what is worrying going forward here is this whole idea of transhumanism. And that's another area that I did approach within Terrestrial Trespassers, is that is the system that we're serving, because it's only serving its own name, its own ends, the system that I speak of, those in governance, those in control, those at the top of the symbolic period of power. Do they want to move us as a sentient species into a species that has no identity, that has no personality, that is trying to dumb us down and take away the process of our true sovereignty on a spiritual level? Because I think when we're dealing with the UFO subject, and whichever way it presents itself to the individual, we have to understand that it's a unique journey for each and every one of us, that your journey is unique. And I believe that we are here for a purpose, and perhaps what's happening here is something that occurred thousands of years ago, history repeating itself. So I think in answer to that question, it's a multi-complex question, but what are the greys? Well, I don't, for one, believe that they're spacemen. I don't consider them to be spacemen coming from Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticuli, no matter what they say to their subjects or the abductees that they take on board, they select. I believe we're dealing with another force that presents itself in this way, in this manner, because, as you know, many other good researchers know, and Dr. Jack Vallée also has stated, it changes face, it changes the way it presents itself. It's almost as if it's teasing us as it's going forward. And this is very much evident when you look into ufology, going back into the past, with the flying airships, when we didn't really have any around, and then moving into the ghost rockets, and then the flying saucers, always a one step ahead of where we are in terms of our technological revolution. So I believe that the Greys are operating on an interdimensional level, and that they are interested in the process of replication, of rebirthing, of generating this kind of interest within the area of biology and also consciousness, the soul, I think, something that they are or appear to be deprived of.
Well, I've got a question from Rebecca now. Hiya, Philip. Lovely to see you as Farex. You're aware of any times that the phenomena has presented to the spirit giving you a message? Thank you.
Hello, Rebecca, and thank you. A very interesting question. Well, there are two sides to this coin. In terms of clairvoyance, I claim nothing, but I was very hardened and wanted to find out how the process worked. Now, we can either go down two roads with this. We can either say, well, yes, we're being deceived by a greater force that's making us believe that everything is not real. I don't believe that. I believe that there are always two sides to two coins. I believe in the spirit. I believe in our continuation beyond this realm. I believe in spirit communication, as long as it's done in the correct method and the correct way. Believe you me, I've been involved with that subject matter for quite a long time. And I've seen some brilliant instruments, mediums that is, and some not so good. But you can always, separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, I believe that the phenomena can or is able to replicate or deceive an individual, but not continuously. Remember, this force, this phenomena can only come into our dimension of reality in very short bursts. It doesn't seem to be able to exist for long periods of time of where we are. I give the indication of UFOs when they come into our dimension of awareness, and they seem to alter the time and the space around us. And when they come onto a deeper level, I feel that they start to really integrate with you, or perhaps bring in the real part of you into their essence, so that there is interaction. I have heard this before about whether or not all mediums are being deceived by spirits that are making you believe that you've got your aunt or your mum or your dad. No, I believe that there is a genuine passage to spirit, to communication with those on the other side. But bearing in mind also, there are cases with regards to the Greys where they have actually, when they've abducted someone, they have actually brought the abductee's dead relatives on board their so-called craft to, I believe, make or get some kind of emotional response or stimuli going there, because the person will think, my goodness me, there's my mum or my dad or my grandfather or whatever, and that would really mess them up on an emotional level. So I believe that, yes, there are two sides to this. I believe that the phenomenon is able to integrate itself in and around the individual to summon certain people or brings certain information that's not true. But I am also of the understanding that there is a direct passage to the divine, to the right connection with regards to, and if I may say this very lightly, the Christ energy and the Sophia energy, because there was a male and female energy connected going back into the past, which the major churches did not want the public to know about. And as I said before, if you start looking into the original codices going back into antiquity, you will find that it's a very different story altogether. And there's a story, and it's not just a story, but one that makes absolute sense to anyone else. So it's a good question. I agree with you. There are two sides to this. I believe that it's possible, but not always.
Before we move on to the next question is, do you think some people are chosen to connect with aliens?
Well, I believe, I know that Steve Aspin, author of Out of Time, wrote a book about the intergenerational connection with these greys. And I know the work of Whitley Strieber, who also has stated there seems to be some connection on an intergenerational level. So these wonderful researchers, I know that Paul's also had his experiences, and they all seem to have a connection with family from the past. And most notably with our family, there are a few members, not just my maternal grandmother, but also my cousin's husband and my uncle who has passed over, who's had these so-called UFO encounters. So I believe that it's possible. It doesn't make us unique. We are all unique. Every one of us are special, are connected. It doesn't matter if you're the man with the can or the queen with the crown. It doesn't matter if you're famous or if you're not. To me, the one thing I enjoy and love with people is that respect, that love, and then we're on that page. It doesn't matter where you are. But I believe most definitely, with regards to this, that when you are dealing with this subject matter, we have to be very level with it. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Question from Joe. Does Philip and his brother still get visitations from extraterrestrials? Good or bad?
Well, I must say, the only one that I do recall in terms of the abduction was the 1989 event. There may have been another one. And I can't say anything because I have no memory of it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was one some years ago now, but not too long ago. And there may also have been some in childhood. So, but no, I think since the last sighting of those UFOs that we saw and the three of them on the night in question, that's the last that we saw of them. We haven't had any more. I think we're a couple of washed out old has-beens to them now. I think we've served our purpose and they don't want anything more to do with it. Or it's possible that we have clocked what the phenomena could be, or it's possible to a degree. I'm not saying that we're right, but when you are drawn and fascinated into this phenomena, when you're drawn to it, you feel sucked into it. And of course, it's interesting how it presents itself to you. I'll give an example. On the 8th of June 1998, when we had been doing our research at Rendlesham Forest, and not that I'm a bigwig researcher, I was doing it out of my own interest because another researcher, a very good friend, a wonderful friend, Peter Robbins, said many long years ago, over 20 years ago, you should go there and visit there. And of course, we've now become firm friends for many long years. So I wanted to go and investigate it. And we also were met by a lot of synchronicities there. And on one event on the 8th of June 1998, at precisely 10:15, we had actually summoned a UFO through a psychic experiment. And this is something that opened up another can of worms or another area of research in terms of what we could be dealing with, because this phenomena seems to be aware of what you're thinking, what you're projecting. So we wanted to find out whether or not it was them linking with us or them or us linking with them. Was it a two-way process? So that was a very interesting experiment that we performed, and it worked. And again, you have people saying, well, where's your proof? No, I'm very happy to report that I don't have any. And I didn't want any because it was a personal experience and something that, me, my brother and Susan, Susan Gamble, she's now Susan O'Connor because she's married, will never forget that. And we also met the original investigator out there under very strange circumstances, a lovely lady, Brenda Butler. And I did end up, connecting with her and co-authoring another book because she hadn't published anything since Sky Crash, A Cosmic Conspiracy by Neville Spearman and co. back in 1984 with Jenny Randles and Dot Street. And so Sky Crash Throughout Time came out. I must admit, it was attacked somewhat when it was brought out by the original publishers, Cover Band Limited, because everyone just wanted to believe in the 1980 event. They could not understand there was any history of UFO activity before or after that time. So, you'll find that when you're getting involved in this, you upset a lot of people. So don't go tipping that apple cart up, whatever you do. Dear Lord.
Question from Joanne. Hi, Philip. What are your thoughts on free will and alien abduction that violate this, doing what they want?
Yes, now that's an interesting question because in some documented cases, we hear a lot about, some kind of law that is supposed to prevent these extraterrestrials from integrating with certain individuals. Well, they've broken that law anyway. Even if there was some law, I've never seen this law. I don't know if it was like put on a stone like the Ten Commandments somewhere that we haven't seen. But I have to say to you that the free will seems to be broken. Now, there are another two parts to this because people say when you're dealing with the psychic component, well, maybe we made an agreement on the other side for them to do this when we incarnated into this form.
Yeah.
And then we've forgotten about it. So I'm not so sure about that. And certainly when you are touched by the singularity, it changes you. So I believe that the greys themselves will come in regardless if there's any free will. And my argument is that, they arrest you, they, put the fear of God in you, and they're doing what they're doing, like I suppose like doctors or researchers themselves. And they give nothing in terms of transparency. I mean, if you're going to the doctors and you're going through a procedure, the doctor will tell you what they're going to do with you. They're going to tell you the procedure that you're going to go through. They're going to tell you everything. So when these greys, as it were, take you, nothing is explained, nothing at all. And in a lot of cases, the majority of cases, they lie to the individual. They lie to you. So, when I had my experience, absolutely nothing was explained to me, absolutely nothing at all. So any violation of free will, well, I think they can come in and do that anyway. People on this planet do it with other people. And did they write that in their life chart on the other side? No, I don't think so. I think we have a certain amount of free will. I think we have a certain, perhaps it's possible, blueprint that we can work towards or work around. But I believe that free will does have a major component to play within our life. And that can change, that can alter drastically. So I think life here is a delicate balance. And not everything is set in stone, certainly where free will is concerned on that level. It's an interesting question and highly speculative, because that's all we can deal with is speculation and theoretical content. But by putting the pieces together through reports and through patterns, we can try and make some kind of sense of what may be going on here. So yeah, it's a good question.
Just before we move on to the next question, I've got it ready already. Do you think the aliens were here before the Great Flood?
Yes.
And do you think we are part of alien ourselves?
Yes, I absolutely do. I mean, I can't prove this, but I believe myself personally that going back into antiquity, as I stated before, and you'll find out that a lot of good researchers are now bringing this forward within the original codices, not only in Gnostic codices, but also in the Hebrew text, the original codices. And it stipulates that we were created by gods. There is no question, there is no mention of a god there. And, I believe that we are components. In fact, I always knew this because I was an interfering young lad when I was younger. I was always questioning everything. I wanted to know how things worked. I wasn't happy with the way it was told to you. And I can't prove this, but I'm black and white. I always knew that when we went through the process of evolution that we were told in school, I thought, well, that can't be possible. That's not right. And when I asked, not only about the Bible, which got myself into trouble as well, too, with one of the RE teachers then, but also about the process of the mammal and the fusing hominid with a part of their DNA, which would then create the human. And I believe that we are so far removed from our original creators in the Garden of Eden, or Eden. I think it's called Eden or Edena.
Yeah.
So I believe there were processing plants. I agreed with that with regards to the genesis and the creation of a mammal, a biological entity that had an infusion of something more than what they were, but was used primarily as a slave force. And I do joke, Bob, I've said this all the time, we were slaves then. Nothing much has changed today, except exactly, we're not seeing the extraterrestrials or the gods of old, but it's, some of the puppets up there probably working hand in claw with them at the top. Who knows? There we are.
Yeah, that's true. A question from Steph. Philip, would you consider having regression for things you may not remember? I'm actually considering having it done myself.
Yes, well,
Steph.
Yes, Steph. Hello, Steph, and thank you very much, Steph. I remembered the abduction very strangely, how it happened, and I believe I understand why that is. A gentleman, a very good gentleman, an honest, down-to-earth gentleman, came from Bicester, and he worked with one of the top authors from America. Was it Newton? I can't remember his name now. He wrote books on the afterlife and regression and taking people back. So this guy was trained by him, and he came to come and see me, and he tried to regress me, and it couldn't happen. I couldn't be regressed. I think that I can't. It's very hard to hypnotize me or regress me. It can't be done. So I don't know whether or not I'm too strong-willed or too much of an interfering person in terms of my mind, that it couldn't work. It didn't work. So I would love to have regression, but if you are having regression, I know that Kathleen Marden, she's offered for me and Ronnie to go through a form of regression, and that was meant to happen a few years ago. She's a beautiful, wonderful soul, lovely lass. So it's interesting. I'm open to it. Yeah. But if you are having one done, Steph, please make sure that you get it done by someone who is qualified and has some kind of history with regards to dealing with individuals who have had these types of encounters. There should be no suggestibility whatsoever from the regressionist at all. It has to be done above board. And I'm not an expert in regression, but I have heard some horror stories before from certain people who've had these regressions done to them. So just tread cautiously there, my lovely. But if it's for you, try it. See what happens.
Before we go on to the next question, have you ever done studies on near death? What happens?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I actually had gone through an experience like that myself before, when we lived in South Africa. I was a kid, and with my twin brother, and I almost drowned. And the only way I can explain it was that when I was under the water, I could see the sunlight coming through. People say to me, "Oh, you saw the light." You said, "I didn't see any light. I knew when I was under the water, there was the sun reflecting above the surface of the water." When I went under, and I started to get weaker and weaker. And the next thing that happened was that, I have written about this in my other book, Guardians of the Dead, I came up. And for a kid, I'm like, well, I'm in the air, and I can see this bald-headed man diving into the water. And then the next thing that I know is I'm in this beautiful place that I seem to recognize. And it's not just a case of, oh, well, let me explain what it's like. It's a completely different reality. I believe what happens is that through our normal processing of information and experience here on Earth in a limited level of conscious recording, like your mobile phone with a signal that comes into the apparatus, everything's recorded. And if your phone dies, all of that information within the signal, is sent to a cloud. I'm not saying that we go to a cloud when we pass over, but I'm just saying that that information is retrievable. Yeah. And so I believe that when we die, all of your experiences, all of them come together so that you can actually live within the boundaries of eternity. You're not limited by time or separation of time or with memory. So it was quite incredible. So I am linked with the Near Death Institute. I've just recently linked with the Near Death Institute. They are amazing people. They have professors, lecturers, all that type of individuals linked with this research. So I have been looking into that for many long years. And one of the things you will also find, interestingly enough, is that, and I'm not frightened to hold anything back, in 1996, through the article Spirits in the Material World that was published by Alien Encounters, I made mention of the NDE being similar to the abduction phenomena. They're operating on different levels of reality, of dimensions of awareness, but have a look at that, because that's interesting to see how the near-death experience, when they go over, they cross over, there is a sense of timelessness. There is a connection with loved ones where communication is done telepathically. If there's anything that's happened to their diseased body on Earth while they're there, when they come back, there seems to be a recorrection within the whole anatomy of, in a lot of cases, of the biological matter of their biological system, sorry. So when you go to abductions, they carry they can bring them back in when they're brought back to perhaps their original form. They carry these, implants and so forth with them. So, I've been looking at both areas, not just NDE research or afterlife communications, the soul, but also the UFO phenomena and kind of like exploring that. So it's kind of heavy dealing with one to the other. So, it's like no different from Paul dealing with UFOs and then the cryptids. People say, "Oh, hang on a minute. They're two separate categories." No, but you'll find that when you get involved in this, you'll start to be drawn down this area where that rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland seems to get bigger and deeper. But the reality is obviously telling you something, or projecting itself in a way that is making you aware there's more to this. There seems to be connections made. Yeah.
Question from Rebecca. Philip, do you think there is some type of prime directive like in Star Trek?
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much, my lovely. I got to tell you, I love Star Trek, and I wish we lived in that world, and I would love to be a captain of the Starship Enterprise, Voyager even. Catherine J. Way, move over. I think a prime directive, that's interesting. I think that is very interesting. In terms of a prime directive, or in a way of, hang on, we can't go any more down that road. We have a prime directive to follow. I think it's possible that certain intelligences, whether or not they're coming through within the paranormal, as we consider the paranormal, perhaps in the astral planes and the etheric nature of reality beyond this level, or indeed from deep space, I think if they're intelligent, I would hope that they would have a prime directive, but this phenomena doesn't seem to have one. The UFOs that come into our airspace don't seem to have one. They actually come in, well, I know they're restricted to us Earthlings, but they wouldn't give a damn about that. They're not going to say, hang on a minute, I'm not allowed to be in this area of the world. So I don't think they have a prime directive where we're concerned. Perhaps within their own culture, their own intelligence, their own dimension of awareness, perhaps that's possible with them, as we have prime directives here as humans on this level. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't go that far. But not with us, no. I don't think that many of them have that prime directive. I think we are open. And interestingly, isn't it, that when you look at the human, how so far removed we are. Think about this, Rebecca, and all you other lovely souls out there. Think about this. We as the human are so far removed from nature. And also, not just that, but within elements of the paranormal. I mean, paranormal seem to connect on levels that are quite varied. In terms of NDE, the communication is done the same as with an abduction. It's the same with people that see Sasquatch. They sometimes have some kind of mind speak or mental telepathy. How is that possible? So I think that as a human, we haven't fared very well in the grand cosmic design of things. I think if we are an evolving species, then we still got a long way to go. I mean, let's be honest. As a species ourselves, we don't know how to treat one another. And we're warring. And we're destructive. We can't be trusted. People are very wary of other people because they can't read someone else's mind. And perhaps this is why the system we serve is so intent and so patiently wanting to move towards transhumanism, which means that they want to take away the individuality away from you, that they want to know what you're thinking. They want to know what you're about. And I do know also, excuse me, that in terms of the system that we serve, they know about all of you. Even it, it doesn't mean to say you're going to be an author, all this. And anyone remotely interested in these subject matters, it wouldn't surprise me if they're watching, because they want to know what you know. They want to collate. And is that possible because they don't have all the answers themselves? Who knows?
Do they do it through, Philip? Do they do this through consciousness then?
Well, I mean, I believe that the old AI technology now, not sentient AI, but AI, certainly through media, machines, they can get any information on you. But yes, also within the programs of remote viewing, remote influencing. And this is not science fiction or something from Star Trek. This is true. And if you look into the work of, Robert Monroe, who was also exploring the astral realms, a brilliant researcher, an absolutely incredible man. And the military got involved with his ability and be able to separate his non-physical self into the astral planes. It's no different, my argument, from remote viewing. The military were trained into that, whether they're projecting their consciousness out of our time-space continuum and able to remote influence as well. Would you believe it? Remote influence, not just remote view. Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that, we are living in times now, not because we've come out of the Cold War, but now it's dangerous territory because it's almost like paranoia. And I think the system that we serve is so clever in the way that it hides. Now you can get information very easily, and people can cover themselves or make out there's someone else, or try and bring you down this way or that way. But I do believe that the system that we serve have got a massive base of operations, and they're very much aware of those who are interested or have vested interests within not only ufology, cryptozoology, or the areas of near-death studies or the paranormal. I think it's evident that they themselves are just keeping an eye on those people and making sure that someone doesn't rock the boat too much. But they are so supremely confident, you see, that we won't put the pieces together. But we'll damn well give it a try. All of us researchers will damn well give them a run for their money, I can tell you.
I know when we talk about aliens, what is their agenda? Do you think they want to come back and live here again?
We don't know. I mean, there was a thought with me with regards to the Greys, and this is quite horrifying, that perhaps that they are creating a new genus because we as a human species are finished, that they are wanting to create a new or evolve a new race to take them to another dimension or another world or realm or whatever. Who knows? We don't know. My own thoughts are that they're trying to bridge the gap between their reality and step into ours. They're trying to find that within themselves. And also the link with the soul or consciousness, trying to gain that spark within themselves of what they have lost, perhaps through the act of replication. If you go back into the past, you will find that our original creators had primarily not wanted us to reproduce, but it was agreed that reproduction could go ahead. And of course, I think that if we look into the annals of Genesis or the original codices, it tells you that these gods tried to wipe humanity out because we were becoming a problem for them. And of course, we weren't meant to reproduce. So who is to say that these overlords didn't create another species that was a slave race that were not permitted to reproduce? And these Greys are an echo or a remnant of that faction that have found us a species that can reproduce and think, hang on a minute, our creators created this lot down here, they can reproduce. Where's the secret? Well, what is it that they have that we don't have, that we weren't privy to? So there are many varied angles that I looked in within Terrestrial Trespassers near the end of the book that kind of like brings these subject matters into the equation, because we're not just looking at one thing here. You've got to understand that there are other compartments that seem to connect with it, and compartments, by the way, that have been separated and decompartmentalized so that it's almost now impossible for anyone to put the pieces together. So yeah, that's my generalized idea. I don't, at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't have a clue. But my gut feeling is that with regards to the theoretical work, it's certainly suspect, so we can play around with a few of those ideas or try and put them together in terms of what this is all about. But I do joke and say I'm going to get a refund when I pass over to the other side. And I will say in big letters, or say to them in Mindspeak, what on _earth was that all about? And I'll get some real spirits in me, Bob.
Definitely. You definitely would as well. When you talk about who runs the world, is it the
Yes.
Majestic 12, or who has the power to save, let aliens come in or not?
Well, it is interesting, and I do believe, and I think a lot of researchers know that there is a higher power. There's people who have money, because if you've got money, the earth is your playground. And where all of us are subservient, we've got to scrape the barrel, we've got to toil the soil, we've got to pay our taxes, don't ask any questions, be programmed. I mean, let's look at it. Going back in the day, you could be a witch if you brought a child into the world a different way. You were burnt or drowned. So this is the way that control was imposed to subjugate consciousness. And now we're seeing this because the religious factions are no longer as strongly held within the cultural faction. We now have a new system which is using psychological warfare, psychological weapons against us people to divide and turn, sorry, the same word, to divide people against one another. Very clever tactics. But when you look at also the political arena that we have here, I mean, what a shambles. You can see what those at the top are wanting. They want their dragons in. They want their serpents to run the show, because anyone that comes in to affect that agenda that they have, they won't have it. They'll get rid of them, or they'll probably use a dirty tactic somewhere along the way to bring the person down. And that is clearly evident without naming names about what's going on at the moment. Just step back and watch and see what's going on. And continuously, you'll see this brainwashing all the time on AOL, on the news, on the radio. It's like the same old rubbish going round the wheel. And you're like, well, are there people at the top? Yes, I believe there are. And I believe these people are the ones who are very much into the occult, into the dark arts. Definitely. Oh, don't do this and don't do that, when they're doing all of that. So, and any of their servants, those that serve under them, are rewarded richly, given all the gongs, the honors, the money, the fame. If they step out of line, they're all deserting the ship. So you're looking into a much darker area, and I mean darker area, where you have to be very, very careful, because when you are trying to look for those overlords, are they human? Who knows?
We don't know.
But we don't. But those at the top, they are definitely, yes, running the show. They are in charge, and they will do everything within their capacity to make sure that their agenda goes forward. They lie to us continuously. You can see it. No, nothing to do with the chemtrails. What's happened recently? They've admitted, haven't they, that they are putting something in the atmosphere. I don't think they told us the whole story. But they told us before that there was no such thing. And while I'm on my soapbox here, there's one other thing I want to mention here. I've got to get it off my chest, Bob. You've got to know it, Bob. You've got to know it, Bob. It's the UFOs. No such thing as UFOs, like life after death. Always questionable. Yes, no. Yes, no. But there was a thing. I'm sorry. I've got so much stuff in my head. I can't remember anything. There was a thing on the news here in England not long ago, a couple of years ago, where they were saying, oh, UFOs crashed. UFOs crashed. It's crashed, abroad somewhere. UFOs. They were talking about UFOs on mainstream news. Yeah?
Yeah.
Or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Hang on a minute. You guys were saying they don't exist. Now you're contradicting that question, and we can see already what's going on in the Pentagon with regards to Grush. And I do admire the man. I've got to say this, whatever you think about the man, and of course Coulthard as well too. I did hear from him briefly, Coulthard, the author of In Plain Sight, who's helped him, and the others, Jeremy Corbyn and Corbell. Sorry, I can never pronounce his name, and George Knapp, the wonderful, amazing George Knapp. So I believe that they know what's going on, but they're just messing with our minds, the public's minds. Like be transparent, be open, be honest and truthful, but they're not. They lie. They continuously lie.
I feel it. It's like you saying we are programmed.
Oh, definitely. But I'm not, and neither are you, and neither are the others. No way. They're not going to program away. No, George Lucas said this once. He said, no way. No way. No way.
A question from Steph. Philip, where do you think the giants fit into the whole equation, or lost civilization, or something totally different?
Well, there were meant to be giants that walked the earth. That much is fact. They were considered giants. I believe that our overlords, the gods, were bigger than us. I mean, I think they did that in the film Prometheus. They made it's incredible, not a very gory film, but the engineers were quite smart. I thought, wow, they're the engineers. They were like huge and like muscular and like they were incredible. So I believe that these so-called lost civilizations did exist, and I believe that through the advent of certain world catastrophes, that information and evidence has been covered, even though it's been perhaps dug up by researchers, by archaeologists within the scientific community, and a lot of strange activity, although it's another subject matter that can go on for hours, in Antarctica, which is another area of great interest to me. And that I will be wanting to look into that a lot more in a couple of years, because I'm working on some other projects at the moment, so I don't have time with regards to that. But certainly there were giants that walked the earth, and there were some reports from some military guys. I can't remember if it was Afghanistan, where it was Afghanistan or somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere else. Forget, where one of these things was seen and attacked them, and the military know about them, but they keep it all under wraps, as it were. So yes, the lost civilizations, of course. I think in terms of our evolution, they're covering the fact that they created this timeline that doesn't make any sense. There were perhaps civilizations far more advanced than us before we came along, and they're trying to make out, oh no, it was all primitive. No, I don't believe that. No,
I don't as well. Another question from Rebecca. Philip, going back to reproduction, I find it strange that when speaking generally about human females, they seem to have the hardest births in nature. Do you have any thoughts on this?
well, I can only apologize, Rebecca, for that. I'm a male, so I wouldn't have any idea of that, I'm afraid. But yes, I'm not so sure. But it's clear to see that the reproductive process is development within nearly all of nature, and there are some species that can replicate themselves, but certainly with us. So I don't think that's anything like a punishment. I think it's just the way that the body is designed. But it is interesting. I think that's a good question, Rebecca, and one that I would never really have considered. But there again, I wouldn't, would I? Because we're males and you're a female, so you would know better than I and anyone else. So.
I like that. Yeah. I know you're looking into something different for the future, and I know you're writing maybe a couple of books.
Yes.
Can you give us a brief insight what you're going to look into next?
Yeah, well, I'm working on a book, a spiritual book. I say spiritual, it's so condensed, isn't it? It's about consciousness, reincarnation, incarnation, the process of life, why we're here. So I'm working on that for a publisher. I have a publisher for that with the Near Death Institute. Hopefully that will all be going ahead and along. I've got something coming out with them anyway, and a compilation of work. I'm so honored and proud. And I am attentively working on a new UFO book. There are another 2 UFO books that I want to work on. One I'm halfway through that I've had to put on the pile for the moment because of this new book on the spiritual side of things, and then there'll be some other UFO books later. So I guess I'll be tied up and busy, like most good researchers. That we're all busy. Even life, even if you don't write or research, life is still busy. Doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, isn't it?
Yes,
you look into things, and then somebody gives you an idea. You think, oh, I better look into that.
Yes. The trouble is it gets you into trouble. Yes, that's it. Nasty things, research, get you into trouble, make you late for tea.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I know. Exactly, but you're still doing your psychic work.
Oh yes, nearly every night. Yes, and that's interesting because it's not just I work very hard to ascertain the facts. So I'm an evidence medium. I like to bring evidence through. And anyone ask me yes or no, I never feed. I never have done. But there are some interesting parts that I experienced with regards to the psychic realm, and a fascinating build-up, a manifestation of a friend who had died and presented himself to me in 1999. So in 1998. We summoned a UFO, and in 1999 we summoned a dead person. What does that tell you?
Exactly.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah,
Well,
interesting.
it's very interesting. You know, I had an encounter with Men in Black. What was very
Yes,
frightening.
documented that in one of my books.
Very frightening. You know, you just
Yeah.
don't believe anything could happen to you like that.
That's right. And when it does, it's like you're astounded, and then you're trying to tell people that from your heart and your soul that, but they're like, and you're like, well, it's affected you and it changes you. But yes, I remember that case very well. I did put it in You, the Public Deceived, I believe. It went in there, and an incredible
you
case,
did, yes.
fascinating case. Yeah.
And the problem is, sometimes when you're walking around, you think, there's somebody following me.
Yeah. Yes.
I have done in the past, and I thought, what's that guy? He was down the other end, and he's up here now. Is he following me?
Yeah.
And I think, right, just try and calm down, go sit down somewhere, see what happens.
Yeah.
And then they've gone another way completely and left you completely.
Yeah, it's strange.
It's just a bit frightening sometimes.
Yeah. Paul had a strange case with that man with the dark glasses. I remembered that. Along the, when he was with his bike, strange bike. I remember that with him as well too. Yeah, yeah, I never forget that. That's horrible.
You know,
bringing down the light.
It is horrible because if he would have touched Mary, that'd have been it.
That's right, absolutely. Well, you can understand, can't you?
They'd have been on floor together, fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. But what a strange. But there again, this whole phenomenon brings levels of high strangeness into our lives, and when you're touched by it, it seems to know about you, or you with them, and there's a connection. But as I said, no, it's all finished now. I think they've left us alone. Well, I might be eating my words, but we'll see. I can only report what happens, and I will only report it when it does occur. That's the only time.
Lee just asked me a question. What was the skin color of the Men in Black in your encounter, Bob? Well, I'll tell you what. It looked like porcelain color.
Oh, right.
It looked very strange. And I looked
odd
when he bent down and said to me, I'm watching you. We'll be always watching you. And I thought, oh my God, what is that? And then when it went away, when you sit down, you think, what was that?
Yeah. And I think it shocks you when it all sinks in. And of course, the Men in Black are known not to be human. They seem odd. There's something very strange about them, almost like a deathly feel to them, especially with their old-fashioned, is it a Cadillacs they used to drive or something like that? The cars.
Yeah.
They're weird. Yeah, it's all old and weird.
Leading up to that, I saw this car in different places, in different streets. And I kept thinking to myself, don't be silly, Bob. You'd just be stupid.
Yes. Frightening.
I had a sighting on the seafront, on the beach at the same time, and it was all happening in the same period. What were happening up at Bempton?
Interesting, fascinating. Yeah, fascinating.
And sheep get mutilated.
Yes.
The lights what we saw under the sea, all happening at the same time.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. And of course, the thing is, when you go down that road, you're left puzzled and you're trying to put the pieces together. And it's like, well, how do I work this out? But that's exactly why all of us are in the situations, the positions that we are, because we're still trying to work that all out. That's what we're doing. Yeah. So hopefully we'll make some progress.
We only talked briefly before the show about people getting aggro on social media. What's a really bad thing to get.
Yes, I mean I've had that. We all get it, don't we? And and at the end of the day, these are people that don't even know who you are or where you're from, but they speak of you as though they know you. And the other part of it is that some of them are not who they appear to be. They use fake names. And of course, I always say that, if you've got a grievance against me, talk to me about it as a man to man or man to woman, whoever it may be. And, let's talk about it, as men, and be open about it. No need to be nasty or stab the back in you or anything like that. But you'll get in anyway. I mean, whichever department of work that you're in, whether it be music or film or authorship or research or scientific, it doesn't matter. You'll get it everywhere and anywhere. So, that's something you just have to live with. Unfortunately,
I think we always said as well, do not reply back to them. Whatever.
That's right. Yeah,
everybody in
no,
the chat room, if you ever get anything like that, speak to Philip or Paul or me, but don't reply back. You're just giving him stuff.
Fuel.
Fuel to give it back to you.
You're giving them the light to fire that cracker. And of course, in my younger days, I was very affected by it. But now you grow a thicker skin. You just think, whatever, I'm not bothered. I'm just getting on with what I need to get on with. And you obviously seem to know a lot about me already that I don't even know about myself, which is wonderful. Go and write a biography, and it might be a bestseller for you. But I'm quite boring, really, to be honest with you. I just like doing my research and looking into things. So.
I like that, Philip.
That is the truth. So yeah.
Anyway, don't makes you a better person. I know Lee's putting don't do it. That makes you a better person, really.
Yes, that's right.
Well, it's
you have
right
to
as well.
Yes.
Exactly. Where can people get your books?
Oh, well, I mean, in the one of the most famous areas or places within the world is Amazon. I mean, our books were published by other publishers years ago. We're under contract with publishers. They're all out of print now. But the new ones are from Amazon, because most publishers are publishing through Amazon because it doesn't cost anything. Reproductive costs and all that type of thing. So even the bigger publishers are publishing their authors through Amazon. So Amazon, you can find the books there. So that's where you can get hold of them. And the new one is Terrestrial Trespassers. And there was You, the Public Deceived, the Grand UFO Deception, which Paul Sinclair wrote the foreword for that book. I was very grateful. And of course, before that, Guardians of the Dead and A Passage Through Eternity, The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs and Aliens. So they're available on Amazon as Kindle, audio, paperback and hardback. Yeah. So you can get them there.
Brilliant. I've enjoyed it tonight, Philip. It's been wonderful. Plenty of questions from everybody in the chat room.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it too. It's like being at home, having a cozy chat, and all together have a little cozy chat, and no big ideas. We're still stretching our heads, but it's just so nice to connect with everyone and to have their amazing input as well too. I always say to anyone, remember that you are just as important as anyone else. You're part of this. It doesn't matter what status that you may think you have. We're all connected. We're all linked. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. So take that how you will. But here's to an amazing journey, and let's hope we can make it more interesting than the current way that life is going at the moment, because it's rather quite depressing.
Thank you. Yeah, Diane just said, great guest as usual. Brilliant show. Absolutely loved it. Thank you, Philip.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much, Bob, and love to all as normal. Yes, thank you.
Oh, lovely. I always tell Paul that. My guest on Friday, the 21st of June, is John Miller. John is author of 13 published books and mostly known for his pioneer research into the field of Christian ufology. A combination of ancient astronaut theory and end times prophecy. He's been in the paranormal research for over 30 years. He's this Friday the 21st of June at 7 p.m. I haven't had him on my show before, so he's new. So I'm sure he'll be a great guest. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. Lovely questions tonight as well. Great questions.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. And I'll say good night now. God bless you.
Yeah, good night. And God bless to you and Ronnie as well.
I will. Bye-bye, Bob. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.